Welcome to the Real Life Buyer podcast. In this podcast, you will hear interviews with business owners, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, authors, and technical specialists in their field. These professionals will hasten your development, accelerate your career, and broaden your business know-how. Now, introducing your host, Dave Barr, interviewing with a purchasing twist.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Life Buyer. If you are struggling with conventional networking, are fed up with watching and listening to webinar after webinar from guru after guru without getting the actual education needed to grow a thriving business, you're probably a member of a large community of like-minded, disillusioned entrepreneurs. So I want us to learn from my next guest, Donnie Boivin, a man who bears the scars and business scrapes and rucks, but has emerged triumphant. I want to hear about his podcasting breakthrough, discover about his networking systems, and unpack his business growth strategies that are fresh, exciting, and deliver to the bottom line. Donnie, just for a bit of background, is the founder and CEO of Success Champions, which incorporates Success Champions podcast, magazine, consulting, and networking. He's also got the Growth Mode podcast, the Badass Business Summit, and he's also a published author, and the books I've read, and we'll touch on those throughout the discussion. So without further ado, I welcome Donnie onto the podcast. Hi, Donnie.
Hey, Dave. That's probably one of my favorite intros of all time because when this airs, I'm going to go steal that front snippet and probably put it on the website because you're right. Most people are doing this whole disillusional networking thing. I absolutely love it, brother. But I'm so stoked to hang out with you. Every time we talk, we have an amazing conversation. So looking forward to sitting back and geeking out with you and talking shop.
Brilliant. Well, as I said, I've read a couple of your books, and we need to mention those before the end of the show. I thoroughly recommend people to listen to them. They are full of interesting bits of information, lots of tips and techniques in there, which I want to touch on. But first of all, I want to know a little bit more about the man. So the man you were before you were this successful entrepreneur versus the man of today. So how would you describe yourself when you started your life in business versus how would you describe yourself now?
Let's see. Well, before I would say ignorant. I would say I was very much the employee. I would say that I was very much the rose-colored glasses and life was going to be easy. And I would say that I was the guy who always felt like things came pretty easy to me. And then I launched a business. And I got a rude awakening really, really, really quick. So right now, as we record this, I'm hitting my 5th year anniversary in business.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I can tell you that the guy I was when I first started out, which was, ignorant's a great word. It doesn't mean I was dumb. It's just there was so many things I just didn't know and understand. To where I am now is an evolutionary transformation that I'm so excited to continue to grow on. I would now classify myself as a business owner. I would classify myself as a massive calculated risk taker. I would classify myself as a student that loves to teach. And I would say that I have evolved more as a person, as a human being, and as a business person, more so in the last 5 years than anything I did the 40 years prior.
Yeah. Would you say there's things that you could prepare for it anyway? If you just got to get in there, get stuck in and make some mistakes and learn from them, or is there things you can do that really would accelerate that sort of learning process that you've really been through?
I don't honestly know if there's an acceleration other than the willingness to get punched in the face. Because as you're building a business, if you're not purposely trying new things, knowing they're going to break, and you're not doing those things to learn how to get better at a thing, then you're never going to build to what I call business freedom. What most people do is they try and build a business and they actually just create a crappy job for themselves. And I would challenge that most people have gone through their life living kind of like the gray man and the emotions, just going through it. And I know a lot of people say that, but I don't think you actually start discover, if you're like me, don't discover who you are, what your purpose in life is, how you're supposed to show up and change the world if it's that big, until you get punched in the face so damn hard that you have no choice but to fight back and figure it out. But what most people do is they get to that point in their journey when the lesson is fixing to happen and they pivot or they throw in the towel and change directions, and they go through life never having learned the key lessons that allow them to evolve.
Yeah, yeah. Having sort of read your book, certainly what's quite clear is you put a lot of things on the line. Obviously, your family, your home, and everything
I
else.
literally bet the farm.
Exactly. It's probably one of the things. It was the case that your wife might punch you in the face if you didn't get it right.
For sure.
Pretty
For sure.
scary thing. But do you think that's a key element? Is that people have to really put things on the line in order to succeed? Have to really have their backs to the wall first?
Yeah, and I'm gonna appreciate all the hate I get on this, but absolutely. And the reason I say they have to, I mean, I think a lot of people have to hit some form of rock bottom. I think people have to hit some sort of excruciatingly tough time to find that thing within them to change. And all the self-help people are about to be pissed at me, because I can tell you I chase the I'm strong enough, I'm good enough, I can do all these things, and this whole positivity type of thing of being awesome and more great in business. None of that crap worked. And it's because I wasn't getting punched in the face. I wasn't trying things to progress further or forward. I had to get to a place where I'd made such a massive bet on myself and it was failing so bad. And, J.K. Rowling says it best. One of my favorite quotes is rock bottom is the foundation on which she built her life. And unfortunately, I think most people have to get to whatever their form of rock bottom is so they'll start fighting, because otherwise the entire world would be shifting and the entire world would be going for it. But I think a lot of people are just daydreaming, which for me, daydreaming's pissing in the wind. You're expecting something to happen, but until you get a freaking knockout punch, then I don't think you'll actually start fighting and figuring things out.
So you almost see that as the kind of accelerant, the adrenaline to get you really moving. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because what got you here to this moment, this point in life, is not going to get you to where you want to go. For me, when I decided to launch the business, I had a tough conversation with myself, and I said, "Dude, you either get living this life, which was a good life. We built the dream farm, we had all the things, but you turn off the dreams, because the dreams are what were killing me. The dreams are life is better, doing something else, grass is greener on the other side, and I wasn't living that life, right? So there's nothing wrong with living that life. You just need to live it. And the other choice for me was where I get in the game, which means I can't just live that life. I got to go do something. And subconsciously, probably consciously, absolutely not. I didn't realize, but that move to screw things up so badly was the exact catalyst that had to happen for me to be able to project and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I've touched on is about your work on podcasting, and that seems to have had quite an impact in your business life. And I know how tough it is to build a podcast audience, get yourself out there, expose you as an individual. Can you kind of talk us through the strategy, perhaps the twists and turns that enable both a successful podcast or multiple podcasts to be formed, and which delivered to the success of your business? What were the key things that happened?
So podcasting was something I stumbled into. I mean, in April of 2018, I was a guest on my first show, and I didn't know what podcasting even was when they asked me to come be a guest. And what happened when I launched my show, of course, I went to, YouTube University to figure out how to podcast.
Absolutely.
I said to YouTube University at some point, to somebody was like, "Oh, there's actually a university." I'm like, "No, I went and watched a whole bunch of videos,
Yeah.
And I taught myself podcasting. So my first show was launched with a gaming headset, Zoom, and a laptop. And I went into my interviews and things from a very much a state of curiosity. I was trying to learn how people survive tough times. I was trying to learn how people build businesses. And I was generally interested in learning. And I think that wicked combination up front is really what catapulted it. But I also, as I was launching the show, I was still starting to do a lot more public speaking. So people always ask me, how'd you get the show so successful? And I tell people, is everywhere I spoke, I would literally plot out the 3 to 5, hotels in the area that I thought would have the sales guys that were traveling in them. And I'd go sit at the bar next to these traveling sales guys and inevitably say, hey, what podcast you listen to? And then by the time we were done, I had them subscribe to my podcast saying, hey, would you send me what episodes you listen to and what the takeaways are? So I became kind of this walking billboard for it. But it was a very much in a, not like a salesy type move. It was, hey, you ask somebody what podcast you listen to, and everybody's like Joe Rogan, right? And so I would, get them to pull out my podcast and they'd see my picture and they're like, oh, whoa. I'm like, yeah, go subscribe. And so I think that catapulted, but somewhere along the way, a PR person reached out to me and said, would I be interested in interviewing Mike Michalowicz, who was the author of Profit First? And I'm like, God, I've read that book. I'd love to interview Mike. And then I looked at my entire systems and processes and everything in the business, and I had a hot mess. Like I had no structure to get people properly scheduled. I had no follow-up mechanisms to get them stuff. So that was kind of the moment for me where I went, okay, now we've got to figure out what's the operational side. So that's where I started learning a lot about business processes and systems. And then I realized, because some of these bigger names kept coming, and I realized, right, I can't have just crap show of a business trying to do all this. So I had to start hiring and outsourcing and putting everything in place. So I tell people a lot, podcasting taught me business, not because of podcasting, but because of the operational side of doing a podcast. And it just taught me a lot about structure. And then I was applying that structure, those systems, those processes to my business. And that's what really helped me turn around the business until my non-compete came up in September. So it was a cool thing that an unexpected risk or something that I started became kind of the mechanism for teaching me how to do and run a business properly, because I'm not a book learning type of guy. I'm not a instructional learning. Like, I sucked in school, so I'm not going to sit down and read a book on business and understand how to run business. I got to learn it by osmosis, and my osmosis kind of methodologies came from podcasting.
Yeah, when I talk to people about podcasts, rightly so, that they don't understand the amount of work that goes into it, the organization you've got to have, as you say, the pre-work, the preparation, you've got all the audio and everything else, and it kind of takes people aback. They think it's just a half hour's work a week, if you're lucky, kind of thing. So
right.
I certainly empathize with the words you've said there. It's a lot more to it.
Well, Dave, some people can. I mean, people can show up and do a hour's worth of work a week, but they're going to be pissed about the results in the back end. Podcasting itself could damn near be a full-time business, full-time job if you really want to take it seriously and be successful with it.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned a number of words in there, and it's clear that connections with people, networking, which we're going to come on to now, is something that is quite important and dear to your heart. And you've certainly transformed, shall we say, what people conventionally think of as networking. We kind of think certainly in the UK, it's become a little bit stale, predictable. You've made it into something that really has transformed the networking arena, made it kind of exciting. So let's firstly do a little bit of reflection, if I may. What aspects do you consider most negative about conventional networking? And what innovations and practices have you developed and implemented to transform this experience?
That's an awesome question. The first thing I can tell you is networking since the 80s has been taught from a broke person's who can't sell's mindset. I'm not bashing on anybody, but what I mean is networking has been taught as the tool for people who can't sell. And what happens is everybody typically stumbles onto networking when their sales are horrible, they can't do cold outreach, business development sucks, and they start Googling other ways to get business. or a buddy tells them about some sort of networking event or group or something, and they stumble into networking. So now you unintentionally have a bunch of broke people sitting around trying to find ways to get business. So if you think about it from that perspective, down to how people are taught to tell what they do for a living, down to how they interact in meetings and the like, everything's done from I got to pitch the room I'm in mindset. And we learned this as we were building out Success Champions networking, because it wasn't a thought when we first launched. We discovered this as we were going through. And what we continually found is people were more adamant to want to talk about them and their company and their services, because it was almost like they were trying to convince the room that they were the guy or gal that deserved that business and you should do business with them. So we flipped that entire idea on its head, and we focused more on, first, let's build your business. Like, let's get you around a bunch of peers and help you focus on, can we get your business to the next level? Second, we don't even talk about referrals. And the reason we don't talk about referrals a whole lot inside the network is, very rarely am I going to run into your ideal perfect client. Very rarely, and I tell people this all the time, is somebody going to come up to me and go, "Oh my God, I'm looking for this X service," right? So we know that. And referrals done in that nature tend to lead to a one-time transaction. Let me refer you to so and so, deal gets done, or it doesn't. And there's a lot of weight that comes with referrals. You're putting your personal brand on the line. You're, vouching for a person, if you will, saying this is the guy or gal you need to do business with. What I've learned from over the years is, oftentimes, if I can get you connected to the right person who has the ideal client base that you're looking for, and you guys can form a synergistic relationship, then a ton of referrals and things can happen from there. So we focus on, let's forget about your end users, right? Let's forget about focusing on what you do for a living. Like, if you're a realtor, if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, I don't need to know all the intimate details of what you do. And when you're in a situation where people can open doors for you and you're constantly droning on about what you do in your service, you're selling. It's like it's a pitch time where you're trying to convince them you're so awesome. When you're in those type of situations, if you can simply boil it down to, hey, this is what I do, quick, finite, 5 to 10 words, and then say, these are the people I need to be introduced to, which are not end users, then that introduction's so much easier to make. And you can get enough introductions where your world will completely blow up. So you take this pure strategy of, let's build your business. And oh, by the way, we kind of have this networking problem on the back end of, let's get you a lot of business coming in while we're teaching you how to do business development and all the things nobody else really teaches you to do in the networking world. And you got a freaking Molotov cocktail with no chance but not finding. I mean, the only thing you will is find success if you put in the time and do the work.
Right. So let's say, I think you've got this in one of your books. You're a newbie. There's a networking group that is in your local area, and you wander on in. Now, you had some specific experiences that really knocked you back. It made it a little bit of a horrible time, but you managed to change that now. Now, just thinking about, you're saying, don't sell. Basically, what it comes across, don't just keep pitching and pitching and pitching. Is it more about helping people to solve their problems with them? Do you say it's the way you communicate that's the key to this?
No. What I would say is, don't even worry about people understanding what you do, which is counterintuitive to how everybody was raised up, right? So what happens is let's say it's an after hours event or something. People go to that event and people have said, you've got to go in, figure out what somebody does, tell them what you do, grab some business cards, maybe set up a one-on-one, a virtual coffee, and there's this whole dance back and forth of trying to figure out, is this person, somebody I want to do business with? Are they a prospect? And the whole time it comes from this place of almost desperation. Like, I need this person to do something for me. What I want people to do is quit worrying about what you do altogether, because the right people who understand how to really network and how to open doors, they're going to ask. right? They're going to want to lean into your world because they understand opening doors for you is the fastest way to build their business. So when you go to these networking and events and everything else, don't worry about a pre-planned 30-second commercial script, anything, right? Don't have to get fancy. Like people who use dumb jingles and things on the back of your business, that is a sales move to try and convince the room, hey, please remember me because I can't go out and get enough of my own business. I need you all in here to remember who I am. So when you go to these events, I really want people to go in and go, all right, look at the room. Who do I want to talk to? Go in and then spend the entire time focused on the individual and literally figure out who they need to be introduced to, what doors need to be open for them, right? And then if you know other people at the event, take them right then and there and make that introduction. Or if you know somebody off the top of your mind they need to meet, make that introduction right then and there, because what happens is when you pour into people, the universe takes care of you because you can't put that much good out without good coming back to you. It's not this whole like giver's gain crap that gets thrown around all the time. I'm not giving to gain. I give because it's the right damn thing to do. So when you're in these rooms and in these environments, if you will think of it like an FBI interrogation, but from a nice thing, you're keeping that spotlight on them at all times. You don't want it to kick back to you. So if somebody asks, what do you do in that moment? It's quick. I'm a realtor. I'm a financial advisor. I'm a business coach. I sell insurance. When you try and go further than that, oftentimes you're explaining like your perfect client and all that stuff. It's always going to come from a place of a sales pitch of some sort. But when you kick it back to them, you can figure out who they need to meet. They'll come back to you and say, okay, you just gave me a couple of cool introductions. Who can I introduce you to? At that point, you need to have that top of mind of who's your synergistic people that you can partner up with and go, well, I'd like to meet insurance agents. I'd like to meet HR consultants. Don't focus on the end user, right? Because that's more of, I can't sell, so I need you to go sell for me. Focus on the synergistic introductions and get a real shot at getting to meet some new people that you otherwise would not be introduced to if you didn't come from introductions versus referrals.
So that's really interesting. I'm not sure if we have this in the US or not, but in the UK, there's a kind of networking process called Meet the Buyer. Now, certainly in the world I'm in, it's obviously I'm a buyer by heart. I spend other people's money, which is always great, and they put you into this networking arena where you are pitched as obviously a buyer of X, Y, and Z, and people will go and talk to you because they obviously want to sell. Now, that's a kind of different kind of networking, but how would you recommend then that you manage that relationship, that situation where you're put into this kind of discussion point, whether you like it or not, about selling and buying? How does your system fit with that kind of environment, do you think?
So just to make sure I understand the room, basically you've got a buyer sitting at the table and you get like 5-10 minutes with that buyer to have all right, perfect.
Exactly.
For me, I want to go into that conversation and really, I don't care if they know a whole lot about my world. I would literally sit across from you, Dave, and go, Dave, I bet you're worn out already of all these people coming and pitching their service, trying to tell you how awesome they are. Brother, do me a favor. Who are you looking for? What do you really need? And what information makes sense from you to know from me right now? Because you're going to have it. There's specific things in that moment. There's specific things you're liable to be looking for, right? And for me, I'm going to focus more on what specifically or who specifically you need to meet and be completely agnostic about my own services. Because I know anything that comes out of my mouth, I can't help it. It's going to come across as some sort of, let me tell you how awesome I am. Right. So I'm going to focus 100% on your world, but I'm going to ask very specifically, what do you want to know about me and my company? And then I'm going to say it very short, very sweet, very quick. And then I'm going to kick the spotlight straight back to you, because otherwise I'll eventually, if you talk long enough, I don't care who you are, you talk long enough, you're going to try and pitch. And it's as soon as you pitch, you turn off the person you're sitting across from.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really curious, if I did that to you in that setting, how would you respond?
That would be a bit of fresh air, to be honest, because you're exactly right that you receive a barrage, shall we say, of people wanting to, exactly as you said, tell you how great they are as individuals, how superb their companies are, how they could transform my world, et cetera, et cetera.
So and look, at the end of the day, people need to hear this. You're no different than Company X. You two do the same thing. You have the same equipment. You have the same thing. At the end of the day, that buyer is going to buy you as long as your capabilities match up, stack up, and everything else. Go form a relationship.
Perfect. That's such a great way. And I'm really glad I asked that question because it drew out thinking for my listeners, buyers out there. I think they'll find that quite refreshing. And the salespeople who, go to these events, hopefully they'll take note on how to really build a proper relationship with an individual.
And I hope all the sales coaches and everything out there are pissed off right now and tell me I'm doing it wrong, because that just makes me happy.
I'll pass them on to you.
Please.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on a little bit now. So clearly you help business owners and entrepreneurs develop successful business strategies. Now, from your experience, what do you find most often are the main challenges and hurdles people encounter? And what do you bring to the table to help them convert their kind of confusion into clarity?
So the number one challenge for anybody building the business is they want the business to magically appear. They just want to put together a website, put out a little bit of content, show up at a networking event, and hopefully somebody goes, "Oh my God, where have you been my entire life? I can't live without you." And whether people are honest with themselves or not, that's how most people go into business. They do not think about what it's going to take to successfully get people to come do business with you. So if people will understand this simple concept, and I'll break it down as simple as I possibly can, you do not have a sales problem. And let me explain. 99% of the people in the world, if they sit across from the right person, the right time, and have a good conversation, usually a deal can happen because it's the right time, right situation, right conversation. People are typically good at that particular conversation. What they suck at is getting to that conversation, because that's where the real work comes. So I tell people, you don't have a sales problem. You actually have a business development problem, which is all the things that get you to the sales, side of things, the sales conversation. So if people would focus on building their business development process, like what is their strategy to get to those conversations, then they will transform how their business development, how their sales is done, and they can actually develop an entire sales system along the way. So if you're listening to this and you hear this and go, okay, he says I got to do business development. Let me break it down even further. 3 key areas that you need to do business development. You need to have warm conversations, cold outreach, and hand-raising activities, okay? Warm conversations, that's your networking, that's your going to conferences, trade shows, it's your online workshops, events, and things that you attend. It's any place that you can get Zoom to Zoom, belly to belly with somebody, new potential buyers, potential prospects, and the like. Cold outreach is just what it sounds like. It's your cold calling, cold emailing, direct messaging on social media. It's door to door, all the things that go from I don't know you to now I need to know you. Let's go have that conversation. And then the third one is your hand raising techniques, which is all the things where you can put out content or information and people will raise their hand and say, I want more information. So it's all your social posting, it's getting on stages, it's being at the trade shows and talking to people, anywhere you can put out information. If people will look at those 3 particular habits, behaviors, activities, and put one measurement on each one of those, because you need to be doing one of each one of those activities at all times to be able to run a successful business. If you look at those activities and go, okay, each week, how many conversations with people that can say yes to me need to come from this activity? And if you put that number to warm conversations, cold outreach, and hand-raising techniques, you will be able to predictively guess at what level of business you can grow, because you know how many conversations it takes to bring on a new client, to scale, to grow. And it forces you to actually start thinking like a business. So in that vein, one of the things we did was Success Champions Networking, where we help you get into as many warm conversations, but we also tell anybody, Success Champions Networking, if you're only doing that to build business, you're going to lose, because networking is a portion of your overall business development strategy, not the entirety of it. And if you use networking as the sole thing and you don't do cold outreaches, you don't do, hand raising, techniques, you're going to lose. So we have for a lot of other things in those regards. But if they follow those three things, they will actually start transforming their business around.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that cold outreach is something that scares a lot of people. Okay. And I wouldn't say buyers welcome it either, to be honest. But you've been trying to help people, and I've listened to you on you go onto LinkedIn and you make a series of cold calls.
Yep.
Do you want to explain, why you do that? How is that helping your audience?
So I'm just a firm believer, if I can't do it, I can't teach it. So if I'm going to ever talk about cold outreach, cold calls, and the likes, then I'm going to put it on display so people can see me doing it. So, and I learned this back when I was working with Sandler Training. I used to do a lot of cold, calls in front of rooms and the things. But I think watching me, and what I do is on LinkedIn, I do live cold calls, put it on speakerphones. You can hear both sides of the conversations. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One, there's a little bit of a look at the monkey. Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this, right? So the other portion of it is by me putting myself out there on display, people have said that, man, if you can do that, surely I can grab a phone and call, right? So hopefully it gives them some own internal courage to be able to do this. 3, I want people to understand how relaxed the conversation should be. And I want them to see what a real, genuine cold call is supposed to sound like. Because what most people do from especially cold calls is they change into this weird personality, over top kind of bravado, and they beat the pure living crap out of the people that answer the phones versus genuinely leaning into the conversation. And I want people to hear how I say it. I want people to feel how I want to say it. And I want people to hear the other people on the other end leaning into the conversation and wanting to have that dialogue back and forth. And I'm curious, just because for your people, since you've heard me do it or watched me do that on LinkedIn, if I were to cold call you that way, would I have a shot of having a real conversation with you?
Absolutely. I think you're making a personal connection. It's very common, as an example, that I receive calls from people that you can tell it is scripted. You can just tell by the tone. They're almost not listening to your responses. Now, when you make the calls, you are trying to engage as an individual and have a conversation. And it is, again, I'll say the words again, a breath of fresh air. You not feel you're being pitched at. You're feeling the person actually has a genuine interest in seeing if there's a synergy, an opportunity to discuss things and find out things, not just be spoken at, should I say. And another thing is that I love about the fact that you are actually doing this live. And I think that is awesome, because you see and hear so many gurus tell people what they've got to do, but don't demonstrate what they're going to do. So I'd say, absolutely hands up to you, mate. It's a brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll tell you, part of where it came from is I watched one of the biggest sales gurus in the world do cold calls, and his style was so greaseball, so over the top. I thought, man, if 90% of my people try and do any of that things he's teaching, they're going to lose. They're going to get their teeth kicked in. So as part of the catalyst for me getting in the game, I'm like, I got to counterbalance that crap, because if you come from a transactional world and you sold based on one transaction a year type of things, you don't give a crap about that person. You don't give a crap about the lifetime value. But in our world, especially on the B2B sales side of things, you're building long relationships, in some cases, years and years and years of doing business with people. If you come in with that hard, closer, beat the crap out of mentality, you're never going to get a time of day with these folks.
Yeah.
Right. People buy from people. And so you got to become a person.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of people who call me and they've got to get every word of that script out before they will stop. You just can't stop them. It's like a bulldozer coming at you. So,
but they teach that crap in the sales training schools. You listen to this stuff and I'm like, man, that person can't remember that many words, let alone spit it out in the heat of the moment.
Exactly. Brilliant. Now, I mentioned about some of your books. You've got obviously Success Champions, and you've got a relatively new book out now. I'll call it Effed to Focus.
That's a good way to
some
call
of
it.
Those people, I think people get the idea, taking your business from growth mode to
especially the people in the UK. They'd be surprised you didn't actually say the word. So.
Yeah, I'm a very good boy. Now, in that, you talk a lot, and you've talked today a lot about processes and automation. And you would admit, you put your hand up and saying, you really struggled with that initially
I still
yourself.
struggle with it. I still struggle with it.
It's not kind of natural. I don't know. Why do you think it's not natural for people to do? And have you got an example, perhaps it be with yourself or a client, of how putting things in an organized manner really catapulted their business?
So I'll use us as a prime example, but I think there are people that are naturally wired to like processes. If you look at Kevin Snow, who's the co-founder of Success Champion Networking, my COO, he's very much process oriented. Very much that integrator type mindset, and he really functions best in when it comes to process and systems. Me, I'm a bull in a china shop, right? I'm very much let's just get it done, and figure it out as we go. There was a moment in our company where things were really starting to grow, things were really starting to scale. And the particular meeting that Kevin and I have, he laughed. I was miserable because he started asking me, "Hey, did you get this done? Did you get this done?" I'm like, "No." "Did you get this done?" "No." "Did you get this done?" "No." And there was like 10 to 15 things that were pivotal things that only I could be doing in the company that weren't be getting done. As soon as he said it, I'm like, crap, I was supposed to do that. So without the process and systems, all these things were falling through the cracks. And, we had a substantial amount of people that were like sitting in a waiting area, if you will, virtually trying to get into our networks and the likes, but they couldn't do it because of me holding up the whole thing. So we had to automate beyond my own head trash. And the way we did that was we looked at the entire step by step, say and go, okay, where is it I'm holding it up? So what we did is like when somebody filled out an application, that application then came to my phone as a text message. So I could then either reach out to the chapter saying somebody's applied, or if I knew beforehand, I'd go ahead and prove. But we figured out what worked best for me and then built automation specifically to me. And in doing that, we started to streamline the process. And instantly, the number of members we were bringing on and the number of things we were doing started coming on because we had this checks and balance that even I couldn't screw up. And that was, pivotal in me being able to do the things that I'm still not good at. And we continue now as we go through different things and build different things out and go, okay, what's the actual process here? What is the mechanism to make sure we stay on track for the process? And what can we deploy? I can tell you that figuring out just the membership piece of Success Champions networking and putting that process in, we can 100% show the projection growth from where we were to how big we launched and went after we got that portion right, because I could no longer bog down the system. So
Yeah.
they're powerful. They're still tough for me, but if you can automate behind your own head trash, it makes it easier.
Yeah. I love the one thing in there you refer to as time blocking, and you
Yep.
used a color code sequence. And if I think, I'll just check my notes, but I think green you use for a sales call, yellow finance, and blue operations. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. We tell everybody that our calendars look like Rainbow Bright puked all over them. And the reason being is I'm such a visual person. So I have to see it. And by color coding all my activities on my calendars, or the company calendars, we run two calendars. We have a corporate calendar, then we have, Kevin and I have our own calendars. We can see if we have enough of the particular activities happening. And it also allowed me to switch hats. And there's, always a section every day that's called the $1 million freaking time block. And the $1 million time block is that moment of when we're specifically going to do our business development activities. And we treat that like it's $1 million freaking sales call. Because I ask anybody, I'm like, if you had a meeting coming up that represented $1 million worth of revenue coming into your business, are you going to miss that meeting? And everybody's like, heck no, right? So I treat my business development as that $1 million hour, because who knows who I talk to that could lead to that much revenue coming into the business, and that forces us to stay in the game. But yeah, color coding makes everything beautiful.
Yeah, it's real kind of simple but effective. And I love that reference. Just looking at the time, I know we're running out of time now. How do people find out more about you, connect with you, find out about your work, where they're best to seek this kind of information?
Absolutely. So go to the website, which is donnieboivin.com. So DONNIE, B as in boy, OI, V as in Victor, IN.com. Or they can text the word success to 817-318-6030, and we'll send all the details and over some free gifts and stuff. Please use your country code, which is +1 for the US, in there. And then it's Donnie Boivin on all social. So come behind me, come hang out. And look, I love getting the questions and stuff in the DM. So make sure you guys connect with me, send me questions. I love helping and giving back any way I can. So feel free to reach out. And I tell everybody on every show I go on, because I love doing it. If you go buy 10 copies of the book, F to Focus, You Figure Out the Real Word. If you go buy 10 copies, they sell for $3.99 a piece. But if you're listening to this and you go buy 10 copies and you send me a copy of the receipt to Donnie@DonnieBoivin.com, I will send you my personal calendar link and give you an hour of my time to work on you, your business, anything you like. It'll cost you $40 US, to do that. But that helps me keep the book out there, keep people buying the books, and gives me a chance to meet the people who are willing to do that. So I'll do that for any of your listeners.
Fantastic. That's great value. I'll put all the links into your socials on my podcast notes. So one last quick one, just to get in before our time has run out. You explain in your book how yourself and others new to business often continue to think like employees. And you mentioned that earlier on, and they've got to change their thinking to a CEO. And that's quite difficult for people to kind of visualize. We're talking about it in that way. And you also mentioned the question, will this move the needle? I think you've got that as a quote in your book as well. So just for those people to really grasp and understand what you're talking about here, can you explain what you mean by that statement and how people go about from changing from an employee thinking to a CEO thinking?
So the most fantastic moment in that regard is when I sat across from a friend of mine and he said, "Tell me about your business." And as I explained my business, he looked at me and said, "Donnie, you don't have a company. You've created a crappy job for yourself." And that was a moment for me that I went, "Oh, crap." And so that drive home, I kept running through my head, what does a CEO do? How does a CEO think? What are the things? And I started coming up with these different ideas of what CEOs do. So one of the things that people need to start thinking about is a CEO very rarely ever thinks in how, they think in who. Who can get this done versus how do I get this done? Because if you're bringing in the experts in those things, in those fields, you need to point them in a direction and let them do what they geek out on, what they do with their strengths. The president or the CEO always stays focused on the main purpose of the business. What is it you're trying to accomplish, and how is that going to be articulated not only to the general populace but to your clientele and everything. In addition to thinking like a CEO, is you've got to think of it as a living organism as a whole. What are the processes to feed the business? What are the processes to relieve the business? What are the mechanisms in there? And guys, I promise when you become a true CEO, you're never going to stop thinking about the business. So when I say move the needle, it's very much, will this particular thing, this particular task, process, or thing we're doing actually push the company forward? Will it accomplish anything? Will it bring in more revenue? Will it actually move the needle? Or is this something I'm just excited about in the moment and I haven't put enough thought into? So we implemented the Donnie rule now inside the company, where exciting, great ideas, we've got to give it 7 days. Let that thing roast for 7 days before we decide to go into it. Because if it was exciting today, it'll still be exciting 7 days from now, but I better be able to prove how it brings revenue into the company.
Great. That's a brilliant thing to end on today. You've shared an awful lot in there. I'll remind people there are a couple of great books out there that they should be looking to add to their portfolio. Your Success Champions book and your F to Focus book.
Hey, can I do one quick thing for you, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
So guys, if you got this far with us and you've been listening to the show, or any other of Dave's episodes, would you do me the honor and go share this out with one person who needs to hear this message, man? I can tell you, having my own podcast, it's a lot of work building your audience and trying to reach people. So you would do a huge honor for Dave if you literally would just tell one other person about this episode or any of his other episodes and get them to tune in and subscribe. It's literally like you walked up and gave Dave a virtual hug. It'll mean everything to him. So share this out for him.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for saying that, Donnie. We certainly have our own challenges in podcasting, and it's great to have something like that said. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time. I know we've got a few minutes left, so I hope you have a brilliant rest of your day, and I really look forward to putting this out to the audience, and thanks for joining me.
My honor, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, mate. Ta-da. So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it, and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.